we know that people often go to university and study degrees, and maybe there might not be too much hope for when they actually leave or graduate. But there's two stories that I'm going to uncover. The first one is based in the States at Yale University. Right, there's two 21-year-olds that have basically secured $3.1 million.
I'm actually quite happy about this because we've been talking, I think it's been a huge talk, creator inequality. I mean, we know South Africa is one of the countries, they don't get monetized for their content. And so our Minister of Communications and Digital Technology is actually calling them out. They're saying, hey, TikTok, you actually need to pay our creators.
I mean, if you look at something like the Amapiano genre, right? All these dance trends that have been trending across the world, like they started here in South Africa, based on South African music, based on South African youth or people like dancers who create these challenges, and now European and American creators replicate the same dance and they get they get paid, and we don't. So it kind of makes South African TikTokers and creators seem like more consumers as opposed to creators.
If you look at Africa, most of the content, I want to say majority of the content on TikTok is black.
Welcome back to Cyber Digest, another valuable episode where we are dissecting the digital matrix, or however Wandile always decides to say. You'll say it the right way, please.
Yes, sir. We're back, baby. The place where we demystify the technological landscape.
We're demystifying.
Yeah, today we demystify. But yeah, guys, we're back again, breaking down the tech world, tech news, and the latest within the tech community.
Mm-hmm.
Some very interesting stories today, guys. Quite wild, I would say. But yeah, gents, maybe the tech highlight of the week. What has been the tech highlight of this week?
I really want to get to mine because mine is actually quite interesting. So I don't know if you guys have watched Minority Report.
No.
I know of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay,
though.
you guys on movie buffs. It's fine. So, so Minority Report is a movie by Steven Spielberg. And so basically the premise of the movie is that you have a crime division within the police force that are called pre-crime. So they catch criminals before they actually commit the crime.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so they use psychics, they call precogs. So in the UK, they're working on AI technology to catch criminals before they've even committed a crime. Which is crazy.
Wait, but how do they do that?
Yeah, and how would they know?
Is it like preconceived crimes?
Yeah, so it's based on data, basically a track record of that person, every possible data point that's been collected about that person. So they use that to kind of develop an algorithm that determines the likelihood of somebody committing a crime. Which is, it sounds a bit...
Well, I guess habits can be tracked, right?
I guess,
careful.
but I mean, also
we're running into stereotypes now.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking, like in a country like the United States, very racist, where they kind of profile black people already based on their skin tone alone.
Yeah.
Most times the guys are innocent or they're not, whatever the case is. How are they going to arrest someone based on something they haven't done or something they wanted to do? Something they haven't done yet. Does that make sense?
I'm guessing maybe they base it on the fact that like you just bought dynamite bombs, or you just bought like a whole amount.
I
of...
could be exploding my wall
actually-
in the garden.
No,
I don't know.
it actually goes much more deeper than that. Like they literally, whether it's social media, whether it's where you grew up, your upbringing, your background, like they base it off of a lot of those facts, and then they determine that this person is likely to commit a crime that, I don't know, related. It could be theft, it could be anything. But
So
you
dangerous.
you haven't committed the crime. So, people did say this is where we're going to end up and this is where we are.
Sure.
Sounds very Black Mirror-like, to be
Very
honest.
dangerous. And yours?
Well, mine is not as exciting as Wandile's, to be very honest. But maybe it's just the designer in me. So this is a tool that I've been using since varsity days, which is about 6 odd years ago. And it's called Figma. And if you guys are not familiar with Figma, it's essentially a design tool. And how I learned to use it was specifically for websites and app designs, which I did plenty of back in university days. But I've kind of explored a lot more of it. And there's like a community feature where people are designing posters, people are designing branded products like clothes, bottles, whatever kind of graphic thing that you think you want to design. They have a community center where people upload their designs. And what's cool about it is that you don't just explore the designs that these people make. You can actually access that design and manipulate it however way you want to kind of manipulated. So that's the cool thing about Figma. If you're into design at all, that's like a perfect starting point. I think the only other kind of design it might not have is like interior design, maybe.
So is it for any kind of design or websites or
Websites, apps, posters,
Jeez.
any kind of graphic, something that would sit on an interface,
Yeah.
you can design that and manipulate anybody else's designs.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. I use it all the time.
Wow.
And what about yours?
I think mine has been the fact that deep research can now scrape the internet and get you contact details. I think that's quite amazing. Because before it never used to
Contact
do
details.
that. Before it used to let you know, like, okay, I can't get people's contact details and stuff. But we all know our data's on the internet. And now it's able to do that. I think you just have to be very wise about the way that you prompt it. But yeah, it's able to get you like emails, addresses.
I would like this
relevant
is a
information.
really useful tool.
But also
Very
concerning
useful.
the people whose contacts are being essentially scraped by this. Like, how will you guys get where I'm going with this? Like,
Do they know that
Yeah,
the
like,
details? Because I know
how
that
do I
I've-
feel about somebody scraping my contact?
yeah, in the
details off
past
web
I've
because-
been sort of looking for clients or like maybe the manager of a certain company or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But their details are not openly disclosed on their websites. And I actually have tried a scraper a couple of months ago that didn't allow. If the information is not listed on the website, you just can't access it.
But I mean, I guess it is useful. I'm just like, I'm kind of the other side of
What
me.
kind
is
of
like,
back end information are they getting, and how are they getting it?
Yeah, I think obviously it's going into social networks. I think that's probably where it's getting a lot of this information. Because I know on Instagram, a lot of people put in their phone numbers.
Yeah,
People
on their
still do
bios
that
and stuff.
on their
That's
bios.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
so I think a lot
crazy.
of people do that.
That
so-
reeks desperation in
so
all
yeah.
honesty. How
Desperation.
How badly do you need it?
That
Okay.
used to be a very Facebook thing, man.
Yeah, facts.
Our
I feel like they
first
still do
story
it.
of the day is quite crazy. Yeah, I mean, take us through it.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to focus this episode on the students. You know, we have a lot of young people that watch Cyber Digest, and I wanted to cater this episode specifically to you guys, right? I want to give you a bit of hope as well. We know that people often go to university and study degrees, and maybe there might not be too much hope for when they actually leave or graduate. But there's two stories that I'm going to uncover. The first one is based in the States at Yale University. Right, there's two 21-year-olds that have basically secured $3.1 million of pre-seed funding for their company, which I think is quite amazing. So the company is called Series, right? And essentially what they're trying to do is become one of the biggest, if not the biggest competitor for LinkedIn. And I think we are all very familiar with LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
personally am not a fan of LinkedIn.
Yeah, man.
If you want to sponsor us, please go ahead, but I'm not a
The
fan.
most robotic.
The most
experience
robotic. I feel.
you'll ever-
I don't know if you've
Bill
seen.
Gates owns it. I'll just put that in.
Yeah, we don't support it still.
We don't. I mean,
We are
I-
not
I-
biased.
I see the use in it, but of course, very useful app. But geez, man, just horrible experience there.
Yeah, I think the way people post on LinkedIn is quite. It feels very pretentious, very fake, very.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think for our generation, and I think because LinkedIn has sort of become a CV, I think I like LinkedIn. I think my only issue was I just found that it didn't cater to the younger generation. But I like
think
the
so
fact
as
that
well.
it pushed you. Like
Yeah.
you could see somebody doing their masters and be encouraged. Somebody started a new position. I think it was a good Instagram showy offy way, but for intellectuals and for business people.
I think it veered into the direction of like when you go there, everything looks the same. Like it's a template of like what people post.
Yeah,
you know,
everybody's
so-
just doing the same thing.
Yeah, of course, company highlights. Like it's very robotic. Like there's not a lot of expression there. And granted, it's supposed to be a very professional experience and so forth. But that's just my
Which I
opinion
think
on-
they've been able to maintain it quite well. That professional, very corporate-y kind of side of social media. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's something that they're doing quite well. But I think what's good about this company, Series, first of all, like you're saying, it's more catered to like an older generation. But this one, Series, is more catered to a younger generation. These guys are 21 years old. They understand what university students want and what they don't want. Their experiences, job hunting, and what it's kind of like sort of entering the corporate market for the first time.
Yeah.
So what they've done is essentially curated like an online persona for yourself, right? And what they've done is also incorporated AI to be able to create like a network where, based on your profile, your experience, it's going to target you towards specific people in your niche. And it's not just for, professionals in the corporate space, but it's also great for networking with people like friends within your industry, because oftentimes you want to learn more about what people your age in the field might be doing. So it connects you quite well in that sense. And I think it's quite an innovative tool. I'm quite impressed that this $3.1 million is just pre-seed funding, which means it's just enough to get them started for to build like a most viable product in MVP. So I'm quite excited to see what these guys are going to do. And I really hope that maybe not tackle LinkedIn, but be a great competitor to LinkedIn for the younger generation. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's quite amazing. I mean, the fact that so they're currently training your AI agent to be able to speak to your friend or suitor on Series, and I think they train it based on your text messages on iMessage, and basically they'll get your goals, your personality, and sort of match you with somebody who you would actually chat with, because if you're chatting with people on iMessage, then obviously you'd like the other person. I think I'm concerned that they're going to get access to everybody's iMessage, like they're going to get all your texts on iMessage, but also I see where it's going. I like the fact that we're pushing authentic relationships, because we don't want people now just interacting with AI. So I think it's quite interesting. But I mean, what do you guys think about networking? Because I mean, traditional networking means you go out, you dress well, you smell nice, you greet, you speak. And now you've got this AI agent that knows exactly how you text, and it essentially does all that for you.
That's the thing of the past, man. Like, people don't do
Going
that
out and networking is bigger.
Listen, I love it. Like, I'd like to think that I'm old school. I love it. But people would rather chill at home, scroll, and literally send a DM on Instagram.
But what's the most effective method, would you say?
What's the most... I mean,
between the two, in-person versus virtual networking?
I'd say the most practical is probably virtual. The most effective would definitely be in person. I think you get a lot
100%.
more across.
Yeah,
But
in a much shorter time as well.
But if you're asking people, I mean, what's the most practical for them? The easiest way to actually communicate with somebody who could be in Cape Town, who's maybe the head of a software company, and they really want to expand their network. They really want to get into that space. And I mean, Cape Town, as we know, it is probably the most booming place when it comes to software development. And I mean, it's the easiest place to go. Social media. So I do think it's a thing of the past. I don't think we're going to have... I think the next generation... I don't think they're going to be the generation that's wearing suits and going out.
And trying
greeting
to
people
find
at a
somebody.
networking session. Very
I
interesting.
don't think so.
I mean, I'm just looking at it with the fact that they're definitely meeting a need in society, because it reminds me of the old Uber model, right? Uber saw that people had to go to these drivers, interact with them, and then like, okay, do I trust him? Okay, let me go into his taxi. And now, obviously, because there's a rating on the taxi, there's a rating on you as the Uber user, it just matches you, and seamlessly, automatically, you sort of get comfortable with that driver. And I think this will really make people get comfortable with each other. I do, though, see people might use it for dating.
I hope it doesn't get to that extent.
If we're being honest, when we look at just the inception of so many social media platforms, it ends up going into a direction where it heavily leans towards that dating market, like really prioritizing that dating experience. Which is great. And I mean, also, what are the odds that these two Yale juniors got this idea from like two twins who were athletes, who were working on this platform before and they come from like a rich family, and they end up getting sued in the near food.
That sounds like Facebook startup story.
Okay.
I'm like, what are the odds, though?
Like, it sounds like you're talking about the Facebook startup
for a
story.
moment.
But also, what you guys are talking about, apps sort of pivoting into something that was not originally built for. This happens all the time in user experience design specifically, and it tends to happen quite a lot. Like, if you look at Paddle, in South Africa, maybe across the world, I don't know, Paddle has boomed quite a lot, and obviously the app was... When they created the app for you to sort of connect with competitors, people that you'd play with, that's what it was built for. But I've heard recently that people are actually using it to date.
It's getting
to meet
Running
potential. Hey, I don't need to be
honest about these running clubs.
I'm a part of this running club.
Have
I'm
you
not
seen these-
saying
have you seen
anything
the
about
reels?
it. A lot, yeah. I've seen a lot of those reels.
Very interesting stuff happening out there.
Are the apps for the running clubs? Maybe that's
They
an
are
interesting-
actually
oh.
quite
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
think
I
they
thought I
are,
had
yeah.
stumbled onto
There's like
something.
Strava, there's all these other ones. I don't
Yeah.
know the rest of them. Nike Running Club, I guess.
Yeah. I
There's-
think you're really trying. If you do all like if you in the paddle space, you're in
Running
the
club
running
space.
club space. What else is like?
Okay, I'm catching strays here. Like, I've been trying to lose weight recently, and I'm like, let me maybe
Nah.
start running.
We
Now,
know
like,
why
I'm
you went
catching-
there.
You know why you're really
We
there
know why
now.
you went there.
So shout out to these two young black entrepreneurs. I think that
Yes,
was
that's
quite
something
beautiful
worth
to see.
mentioning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and it's
And
quite
raising
inspiring,
$3
man.
million in 14 days. I think that's amazing. I think they're definitely on the money.
I think it's-
And yeah.
I think it's also just testament to how young people can also just really take AI and really leverage it to
Yeah.
create something special. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
We're still in the age of invention, and I think that's
And
yeah,
that's what's
powerful.
fire. That's what's fire about AI. They're literally taking these guys are taking a model that already exists,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, using AI to try and see how they can better that experience for the users. And now they have all this funding to be able to, create the MVP. So it's crazy. I wonder how they're gonna take it to new heights. I really want to see that. Just to mention their names, if we want to just name them, the guys' names are Sean Hargrove and Nathan Neo Johnson. It's a weird name, but yeah, shout out to you
boys,
guys.
Shout out. Back home in South Africa, we've got TikTok and all this monetization. We actually spoke about TikTok the last time when we spoke about the fact that they're taking data from users in Europe. And now there's another scandal. What's going on? Take us through.
I'm actually quite happy about this because we've been talking. I think it's been a huge talk. Creator inequality. I mean, we
Yeah.
know South Africa is one of the countries they don't get monetized for their content. And so our Minister of Communications and Digital Technology is actually calling them out. They're saying, hey, TikTok, you
about
actually
time.
need to pay our creators. And that's a beautiful thing, man. I mean, I do think that in a way we're getting quote unquote exploited. I mean, because South African TikTokers, I mean, we drive engagement, of course, along with other countries, but really drive engagement. And then Americans and people from the UK, they're the ones who will reap the benefits because
They're engaging with our stuff.
exactly. So I think this is
Sure.
a step in the right direction. Yeah. So, so he's basically calling them for them to open up a creator fund for South Africans, and creator fund was something that was established in 2022, so that people can actually make money off of the content that they actually produce on TikTok. And South Africa is one of the countries where creators don't get any money. They don't make any money or monetization off of their content. And so, yeah, man, I think it's a great step.
I
Definitely.
think this is something that's been looming for a very long time. I mean, if you look at something like the Amapiano genre, right? All these dance trends that have been trending across the world,
Sure.
like they started here in South Africa, based on South African music, based on South African youth or people like dancers who create these challenges, and now European and American creators replicate the same dance and they get the fund,
And
they
they
get paid,
Yeah.
Sure.
and we don't. So it kind of makes South African TikTokers and creators seem like more consumers as opposed to creators.
Exactly, because then you have Americans and people outside of South Africa who are able to take our trends and make money off
and
of
leverage off of it.
them. And that sounds like appropriation in a way, right? You're taking our culture and
It
then
really
you
does.
using it for commercial gain. So
I think the fact that, it comes from China, and China is very exploitational. They've basically built a business of exploitation. They get young people to do all the hard work, dance, shake, whatever the new challenge is. And yeah, they just watch
crazy.
and rake in all the money. So I think, yeah, I definitely agree with the calling them out. Exploitation cannot be a business model. I just hope that maybe people will move to YouTube, because YouTube now pays shorts, right? And I think
Yes,
that's why people
in South Africa as well.
yes, in South Africa as well.
But it's
I
not
think
quite
that's
the
why
same.
people, I think people do like the TikTok culture.
yeah, because when you go on YouTube, what you bump into is like the long form videos, and you gotta sit through that, and then
And that's intentionally what you're going to YouTube
yeah, it
for.
doesn't have
Yeah.
that casino element that you mentioned in our
Oh yes,
last
the dopamine
episode.
hit.
Yeah, so yeah, man, I think or we should actually boycott TikTok.
I think the
And so-
answer is starting like homegrown African platforms.
Okay. We can do that.
Yeah,
we can
'cause
do that.
We've watched the whole world create social media platforms, right? And I think with AI, it's now much simpler. There's an OpenAI now thinking of actually opening up their own social media platforms. I think it might be time for Africans to actually start their own.
So you're going for a for us, by us kind of approach.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, if you look at Africa, most of the content, I want to say majority of the content on TikTok is black. I want to say that, but I don't have proof. But I think if you look at Africa, I think we've got a lot of young, talented people. And I think if one could build a very strong, homegrown platform, I think it'll do quite well.
I think the strength would come more so not in replicating. Maybe replicating could be the best way. I don't know. But I think generating something new and innovative of our own. Not saying here's TikTok, let's replicate it and hope for the best. Because I don't know if it'll perform as well. Whereas, like we mentioned last week in Bongani's episode, if we're generating or creating new platforms that are tailored to African problems, that's where we'll see the most success and growth.
And the monetization issue is a problem. So I think we can do something where we essentially create a platform where people are actually able to monetize their content. I think that would generate, certainly that would generate a lot of engagement and just people signing up to use the platform. I think that's a great start, actually.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If the selling point is monetization, then definitely. So shout out Soli Malatsi, that's our Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, who actually called this out and who's actually urging people to also just make more noise about this. But yeah.
I think we must invite the minister. Let us know, guys, if we should get in contact with him. But it'd be quite good to have him here and to have him talk.
Personally, I might grill him to understand where we are in AI as South Africa, because I think crickets.
Yeah, I think he needs to answer that. I think we must invite him and maybe hear what his thoughts are. Let's talk about this outsourcing your brain story. When I went through this, I thought this is crazy.
Outsourcing your that.
The whole cheating. The young man that was caught. I mean, what else would you call it? I think it's
outsourcing your brain. I was actually lost for a second, but that's such a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
My brain literally went straight to Black
Mirror. The
Mirror.
moment I read it, I thought, okay, so this guy literally had a new brain answering questions.
100%.
I was thinking of an episode. There's an episode of the new season where essentially they're paying a subscription for
to use a portion of the brain.
Yeah, to upload their memories onto
I heard about that.
cloud, which is crazy.
We actually need to dive into Black Mirror.
I think we need to dive into each episode. Like we all watch an episode. Like we actually start from episode 1 of the new season,
and we dive into the tech on that.
Nice.
That would be amazing, because I'm a big fan of Black Mirror.
That would be quite interesting.
But yeah, essentially this kid that outsourced his brain, he is once again a university story. He's from the University of Columbia, right? And essentially he was suspended, yes, for using an AI tool, but he also created this tool himself. Ooh. So it's a company that he started. And essentially all this controversy started where he essentially went for interviews with Google, with Amazon, with TikTok, and he landed all those interviews successfully using his AI platform. And essentially his AI platform is, a lot of the time you'll find that people, when they're doing virtual interviews, they have an AI software alongside on the same screen that can record what the interviewer is asking and give updates or answers in real time. So that's how people have sort of been landing, these roles. But I think a lot of companies have actually caught on quite quickly. And what they're doing is maybe like asking, do you oblige to say that you're not using AI tools while we're conducting this interview, et cetera, et cetera. But with this guy's specific tool is that it goes undetected. Even if on the company side they're tracking, they're unable to detect that this guy's using an AI tool. And he wanted to take it a step further. Essentially, he saw that virality is the best way to sell a startup or a company. And he saw that to be able to get funding for his MVP, he wants to go viral. So what he did is he recorded these interviews that he did with Amazon, TikTok, and Google, landed those interviews, and then essentially exposed that he used AI to land all of these interviews. And Amazon basically found out people were asking Amazon questions, and they are basically saying, no, we don't condone any of this. We don't want to answer any of your questions. Because I think they are quite embarrassed that this guy was able to land a job when he didn't necessarily do anything to answer the questions correctly. So his videos have been going viral over the past week, and he's essentially raised $5.3 million to be able to get funding for his company.
More than series.
Jesus. Even more than series. And I kind of wanted to ask you guys, do you guys think that his approach was the reason that he got this funding? Or, him sort of like showing that all these advanced tech companies aren't as advanced as they might seem, and I was actually able to land a job using my tech product. Fund me.
That's crazy.
It's an insane
Firstly,
story.
I think for me, I'm just thinking about the fact that, there's so much that people could now start doing, right?
Yes.
Like you're on a sales call and you like say your rebuttal, like, sorry, ma'am, I don't want to sign up for this, because then she gives you the accurate answer because she's using this technology. It's just so crazy. But I do think, though, ethically, I love that whole, please note this call is being recorded.
Yeah.
Because ethically, I think we might need to get there where
With AI.
ethically, because if somebody's on an interview and they're smashing it because of AI.
Yeah, and hey man, I'm always a big fan of when these big large tech companies are getting robbed. Yeah, I very much believe in Robin Hood, and so I'm a big fan of it, and I like to think that the whole cheating side and him, of course, using this to also just cheat on them and what you said. Also, there was an appeal there, and I think that's also it greatly contributed to him being able to raise the capital. So. Yeah,
I agree. And you guys are talking about ethics and stuff, right? So in this, guys, he basically put out on his website basically what the company stands for. And essentially what he's saying is, obviously he's getting a lot of like backlash about this. What he was saying is that when people are innovating innovative products that are pushing the needle, we tend to go against it, and then we adapt, and then we accept, right? So, and the examples that he gave is the calculator is essentially cheating.
yeah.
Google search is essentially cheating.
Whoa.
Because if you guys go on like TikTok, right? It's the tech side of TikTok. A lot of software engineers will tell you that, like, dude, we always refer to Google when we like missing a line of code, or we're going to search all these things because you're not realistically going to remember all of these things. So he's essentially comparing his product to those other two things, Google and the calculator, that eventually everybody's going to adapt and conduct the interviews like this, or do whatever other, tech-related matters with this kind of tool. And he also recently released a video, which will actually show you guys. Yeah.
So, how old did you say you were?
I'm 30 years old.
Your profile says you worked at Bananazon?
Yeah, I've been there for the past 8 years doing like senior software engineering, so like coding.
Really?
Look, I know I look a little young for my age, but I promise you, I'm 30 years old.
Okay, well, maybe you are just way older than you look.
Where this guy is on a date with a girl, right? And he has something that looks like meta glasses, right? And those are the AR glasses, which is all augmented reality, where you can see the person, but you can also see an interface in front of you. And as she's speaking and asking all her questions, this thing is picking up the audio, transcribing it, and then giving responses in real time.
That's crazy.
So as soon as she finishes her sentence, he already has a response,
Yeah.
like off the bat, and he's just going and going and going.
That's crazy.
It's insane, and that's also part of the marketing that he's decided to go about
working
for his
smart.
product. He's working so smart, man, and so ahead of his time as well. So Colombia suspended him, and I think he doesn't really care, because he can see that, if I'm able to get funding of $5.3 million, my product is essentially ready to go.
And I also noticed that, his SaaS is ready, like $20 and you can sign up.
Yeah.
So I think, guys, if you are in sales or you do need these services, maybe you should go look at what he's doing there. Let's have a look at the story. And I think, in this podcast, we've quite discussed OpenAI quite a lot. And we've also looked a lot at Google. And now seeing this shake-up happening, take us through what's going on.
So OpenAI is kind of eyeing Google Chrome, which is crazy, right? And
Like acquiring them.
yeah,
Damn.
which is
okay.
crazy, and because also the proximity of OpenAI with Microsoft, but anyway, so just for a bit of context for our viewers, so basically Google were found by a US federal court to have maintained a monopoly over online search and search advertising. And so for the past year, Google has been appearing in these court hearings and having to, of course, answer to all the questions posed by the DOJ. And so also seeking remedies to restore competition. So the DOJ is saying they might have to relinquish one of their key assets, that either being Android, Google,
Okay.
sorry, that either being Android or Chrome. Yeah. And so recently, Nick Turley, who's OpenAI's head of product, came out and say they would potentially be interested in acquiring Chrome. which would essentially change everything.
But also, how big is Chrome for Google at the moment?
I mean, it's not about that. I mean, one of Google's arguments is that they essentially be giving competition heavy advantage. I mean, you think about the data that Chrome has access to.
Okay,
and
that's real.
Yeah, because last year, OpenAI did ask for API key access to the search engine. So they would use Chrome's search and integrate that into OpenAI or
The
ChatGPT.
responses.
Yeah. So right now, OpenAI, they use Microsoft Bing, but Microsoft Bing isn't as
It's not heavy.
yeah, it's not
Oh,
like
it even exists. I forgot it exists.
yeah. So OpenAI has been saying, I mean, for in order for them to really progress and advance within AI technology, you know, they need that kind of technology, or they need access to that API where they're actually able to access those search queries, and that can also just help them. And yeah,
This
so
could take OpenAI to a whole different level.
It really could. But you know, I'm also just thinking about Google itself now has AI integrated answers, right? When you
Yeah.
ask it, it gives you an AI response.
Using Gemini.
first. And what's funny is that a couple of weeks back, I was trying to access Google on my iPhone, and it said download the app, right? And it was quite vigorous, and I couldn't access it on Safari. I had to go to the app. So now I'm just thinking about it to say, oh, is Google now trying to just like mitigate for that, so that when they sell Chrome, we're all now on the Google app, and we're all now using Gemini or the Google app to search, which I think is interesting.
yeah, and you know, as much as we have praised Google for, you know, the way they kind of approach the market of being able to take risks on product, putting them out there, and sometimes they might pull them back after 2 years, but still they're putting it out there. They have been essentially the silent big bad wolf
They kind of have.
because
I-
they
yeah,
have
definitely.
had
I
a
can agree.
monopoly.
They've
Yeah.
literally been monopolizing the market,
Very true.
which is great for them. And I mean, they've been doing it quite well. But when you look at it at scale, it can only get dirtier from here. So
Yeah, because there has to be competition. And so Nick Turley, so he was actually testifying. So OpenAI's product manager, so he was actually testifying at Google's antitrust trial, and that's where he actually he voiced his interest in acquiring Chrome. So yeah, that's been an interesting development, and you know what? I hope they do. I hope they're successful.
I'm not sure about that. Oh, you know, and I think for me, the interesting part is that we kind of need to. There should be an easy way to access the internet without going through Bing, Chrome, and all these other service providers. I would sort of wish that we were just going to open it up to say, here's
this
the internet.
main browser.
Yeah.
I think that's the key though, to like create an sort of the seamless AI integrated web browser where, you know, it's able to also just take complex prompts, but it's a search engine that also acts like a prompt chat box.
But the problem is that you're going on the highway of Google Chrome, and whatever you search, you
It's
went
catered
through the
to that.
highway. Yeah. I would have
I do-
loved
yeah.
for us to just go directly to the internet. No need to first go through Bing. Or there was even a Yahoo search at some point. Yeah.
Oh, Yahoo, damn.
So yeah, I think that's
RIP.
quite dangerous. But for me, the interesting part also is just the fact that I think we still live in the era where people do prefer a browsing service to arrange stuff. Because I think if I think about Chrome, for me, it's about the fact that I can keep my tabs open, I can move my tabs, it saves my passwords, which is bad, but all that. And I think if OpenAI had it, it would put them at
That's
their
actually
level.
interesting because I actually don't use, but like the only time I actually use the web browser is on my phone. But if I'm on my desktop, I actually don't use it. So
what
if
do
I
you
want
use?
like a web-based search, I'll use Perplexity because you don't kind of have to tell it to search
But
the web.
how did you access Perplexity? Are you talking about the app?
Oh, you mean that way?
Perplexity.
Okay, I get what you're talking about.
Yeah, because you have to go through
You do,
a browser,
damn.
whether it's
Yeah,
Safari,
you're right.
Chrome, Bing, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you were saying, that you don't want the competition between all of these. You just want it to be one straight open source to the internet.
Yeah, and I think also the other problem with having a Chrome is that, well, I guess also Google is the whole login thing, right? Whenever you want to log into another website, it'll say, oh, do you want to log in using
Yeah.
Google?
But-
and somebody was saying that OpenAI might start doing that as well. I think that is also manipulative because it's as though they sort of make it seem as though you're comfortable.
Yeah.
But Google still knows that you're using that platform.
Yeah.
But that just means they've built a great product.
But I do think it
Yeah,
would
they
be
have.
also just good as far as user experience goes for everybody. I mean, ChatGPT, when you're kind of putting in your, whether it's a search prompt or just a normal prompt, I mean, it essentially grabs, if it's web-based, it has to grab from Microsoft Bing. And so they're saying that it would be very beneficial if, they had kind of Chrome integrated into that for their search queries, which would drastically also just improve the experience itself. You're getting like real up-to-date real-time information. I mean, Bing is, it's Bing, so
I don't know.
Not
Bing
much.
is.
I don't even know what
remember.
to say about Bing, to be honest.
I mean, Bing is big. So, yeah, so I don't know. So, which side are you guys on? Do you think, Google has been being unfairly treated, and I think it goes, to this argument of, people should be allowed to expand as far as they can or be as successful they can. I mean, Google essentially, they capitalized before anybody could, and they were the first movers.
Yeah, essentially, it's not their fault that they became as big as they are just because they were early to the game.
Yeah, so do we blame them? Do we treat them unfairly? Do we, why do we persecute them for that?
To be honest, I'm not against what's happening to Google. I think it's good only because monopolies can get very big to the point where they can't be broken. And I think this is my concern as well with Amazon. I foresee that happening with Amazon.
But isn't that the case with all of them, though? Because Apple has Apple Pay. They have Safari, which is essentially kind of like a browser.
It is their browser,
they've got their YouTube is Apple TV. So I feel like
I think it's different
with
because
Apple.
I think it's different simply because Apple is with mainly Apple products, and so
yeah, that's where it's
Google-
at least the
Google-
gates of
Okay,
it.
whereas
Yeah.
Google goes to Android and all the
yeah,
other.
and so all these companies that are essentially using Android, they have Google pre-installed and
Exactly.
as a default browser, and which is like,
And that goes across devices, guys, not just phones and laptops. That's fridges, that's microwaves, that's smart TVs,
Yeah, it's
all of
crazy.
these things.
But I think it might be the only way to win in this day and age because people are so used to whatever they're using. And I feel like as a new product, like I was looking at Perplexity, which was a blowing up project. And the moment Google introduced the searching feature in AI, I don't think people are going to use Perplexity anymore. And I think that's what they're afraid of. Like they have to just be in every other pot so that if one thing dies, the other one just continues to resurrect.
Like a
So
true
yeah,
monopoly.
it's quite a dangerous place to be though.
I think Google's doing it quite well. I think Facebook is trying to do it in the same way, but specifically tailored towards social media. Is it Facebook or
I
Meta? Sorry,
see.
Meta.
Yeah.
They're trying to do it more so in the social media space.
yeah.
But I think what you're saying again about Apple is definitely doing it, but they've already confined themselves. Like they can't expand further than the ecosystem that they've created. That's their only problem.
Aren't they working? I think they can because they've got Apple Pay. And I know in South Africa it's a bit of a pain, but Apple Pay, obviously, they're tracking your finances and they're offering credit cards in the US. So you owe them. And then obviously with the health apps on their phones, they are now saying, hey, we're your health doctor, or whatever the case is. I think they're quite dangerous. I think they can do so. The only concern that I've got, and I think this might be something that we might all think about, is we might need to start taxing companies for owning our data. And what I mean by that is that if you've got my data, you're able to train your AI models and do very well with it, but it's my data, it's my intellectual property. So I think we need to start saying stuff like, okay, Google, you've got all our passwords, you're saving them, cool, you have to pay me to have my data.
Because
That would help then.
Yeah, and I think it's because they downplay it so much that people think it's not of value. It is with a lot of value. I mean,
Exactly.
Meta's starting to has been sending people emails basically asking for their consent to use their data to train their AI models. And of course, a lot of companies have also been doing that where they kind of send the communication and you kind of have to consent to that. But it is your data is worth a lot. It's not just, you just how many steps you took or whatever. It's a lot of it's a lot. And so I think there should be a tax.
Definitely.
It has some sort of value. And
This makes me actually want us to reach out to Mr. Talifani Banks again, because We had a guest one time. His name was Talifani Banks, and he's big in the data space. And his understanding of data goes so deep.
Yeah.
And in that episode, I don't even think we touched on artificial intelligence and how much
was a while
data,
back.
is being trained on this AI. So I would love to hear, how his perspective has changed, how his understanding has grown, and how we're going to move forward essentially in the game of data, which is the new oil.
That'd be so interesting. All right, guys, closing out. I want to thank all of you that watched our previous episode with the guest. It did very well. It went viral. So thank you so much for definitely tuning in and sharing it. We want to encourage you to say, keep sharing it. We're going to keep bringing you excellent value. And yeah, make sure that you never, ever miss an episode. We're always here for you to educate you and help you understand this digital maze. And what do you say we do?
Oh, decoding the digital matrix.
Decoding the digital matrix. Signing out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See you guys next episode.
Until the next one. Sorry, that was Siri. Cheers.
Thank you.